Hi everyone, before you dive into the episode, I just wanted to interrupt really quickly. You're gonna dive into this episode and you're gonna hear me call this podcast the Holistic Hustle Podcast. And that is because it used to be the old name of this podcast. And it was an amazing ride. I'm so grateful for the Holistic Hustle Podcast and what it served. But recently I've decided to rebrand the podcast based off the evolution of my own journey, my own story, and where God is calling me to go next. And so now the rebrand, which you may know already, is called Wisdom is Wealth. Didn't want you to be confused, so dive into this episode. They were an amazing episode, amazing guests, amazing insights, and enjoy.
We've been able to impact so many people's lives, and that's been, life-changing just for us to see that happen.
Hi, I'm Justin Buonomo, and this is Holistic Hustle. Holistic Hustle is doing things for the right reasons, working hard for the right reasons. The healthy balance of what work and progression and accomplishment and success should actually look like. Welcome back to another episode of the Holistic Hustle Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, and I know I say that about all my guests, they are special to me, but this one's extra special because she's my wife, Lauren. And so that'll be something that's going to be really fun and beneficial today, and we'll get into the questions and the reason why she's here in a minute. But also something that's fun is this is the first time the Holistic Hustle Podcast has had an in-person guest. I guess it's easy when we live together, and just thought that this was a great opportunity for us to hop on here and talk about something that we often get questioned about, and in a good way, and we've had a lot of fun talking about it in the past, but just simply, how did we partner to create so much success at our company, JFF, so fast while being so young? And so I think by the time we were 29 and 28, we became millionaires, made our first $1 million, and had a company, JFF, that was and still is worth multiple $1 million. We've got many other ventures that are going on in the background, but JFF really was the start for us when it came to building our wealth, not just materialistically and financially, but from an impact standpoint. And I think our partnership played a huge role in that success, and we did a lot of things right, but we also did a lot of things wrong, and we're going to talk about both here today. And so how this is going to go is I'm asking you the questions first?
Yes.
Right. So I'm asking Lauren questions first. It's going to be about 2 to 3 questions, and then she's going to ask me some questions. Maybe one or two similar, but majority of them will be different questions that we created and talked about before, just simply with the objective of how can we serve the audience when it comes to people that are listening to this, that are business owners, that have a significant other, and we want to be able to pour into them and give them information that's really just going to help them build the business together better, provide a better life for them and their family, and ultimately reach financial freedom. And it is not easy. It's so cliche, to say, but if it was easy, everybody would do it. Right? And thankfully we were able to do it at a young age and do it fast. And again, that wasn't because we were perfect, but because we did make a lot of mistakes, but also did a lot of things right. And I think, again, that'll be exposed here today and hopefully helpful for the audience. And so I'm going to start with a question to Lauren. And the first question for Lauren was, what has been the most rewarding part for you when it comes to the building of JFF? Personally, for you individually?
Well, this one kind of has 3 parts, of course. First, I think the most rewarding thing through all of this has been, the connections that we've been able to build with different people and our clients and the people we've kind of been able to meet through this process. And the second part to that answer is that we've been able to impact so many people's lives. And that's been, life-changing just for us to see that happen. I think, the second part for me is being able to see you in your purpose and your passion as a wife. That's really the only thing I can ask for, is being able just to see you, driven, and just watching you live out your purpose and your passion has been really fun for me to watch. And then obviously the third part is just the financial security that we have through all of this. And the freedom that, we can pick up and go and do whatever we want. We went to the beach this weekend and you did a little bit of work and we were able to enjoy family time at the same time. I don't think that either of us would have been able to do that if we were working at an office or, a job that we can't really work from home, something like that. So answer to your question, but
yeah, no, I love it.
Most important to me.
And I'm happy for part 3 because it actually has something to do with you. I was like, she is going to try to get away with this answer with when I said individually.
I know.
For you, what was the most rewarding part? And the first 2 were about other people, right? Which is fine. My wife's an Enneagram 2. That's what you deal with, and that's what you get lucky to deal with when you're married to an Enneagram 2. But you know what I heard there was the people we met along the way, particularly our clients and our employees. The majority of our employees were at one point clients, and that's how we met them. And you know, some of our mentors in the past have said, you know, don't like befriend your clients, you know, like keep boundaries up. But just with some of the people that we've attracted, it's so hard not to. Like some of our clients are really, really good friends. And the cool thing about our client journey is the more that they progress, the more they succeed inside of our company, the more access that they get to Lauren and I as the owners, me as the CEO, and then our other executives too as well. Like we even host events here for some of our top tier clients that they come in person to our home, sit on our couches, sleep in our beds, use our blankets, and you know, we just mastermind while the fireplace is running and the dogs are running around. And so I have to agree that people have been incredible. And then I appreciate, you know, just seeing me and my purpose, which we'll get to, you know, here in a moment. It's almost impossible for your significant other to be in their purpose if you're not in yours, especially if you're denying yours and or projecting your fears about your purpose or their purpose on them, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But and the last thing, yes, I love the financial freedom. I think a big part of that was Lauren back in October 2022 was able to leave her day job at Hopkins, and I was hoping that was going to be a part of your answer, but I guess that's encapsulated in the financial freedom. And so she's a Pilates mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Who doesn't go to Pilates? But we're getting there. But I appreciate that answer so much. And I think you've done a lot of amazing things in the process, being a significant other, supporting me, seeing in my purpose, which is a big reason for me to be able to operate in that purpose, and for you being able to witness that, but being largely responsible for it too as well. So my next question to you is, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give to couples who are building businesses together?
This is my favorite question, because this is the thing I'm most passionate about through all of this. And I love giving this advice to, I mean, I say women because most of, you know, men clients want their wives to follow the way I've done it, but this can go for husbands as well.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that needs to be focused on is the communication. Really like having, okay, hey, we want to start a business. Okay, let's sit down, talk about what are our goals throughout this business. What do you want? What do I want? How does that look? You know, where do we want this business to go? Who do we want to serve? All of those things. And through those answers, I think you find how you can best support the significant other. I think that was the biggest thing for me. Is in the beginning, I was fearful because I didn't know how I was going to be able to support you, because all I knew was, you know, your hospital job. That was the best way that I could support you. You know what I mean? I never knew anything about the entrepreneurial world, really.
Yeah.
So it was hard for me to understand what you were going to need through all this. And once we finally sat down and had that conversation, like, okay, this is what I need. This is the best way that it's going to operate. That's when I feel like things kind of start to flow for us. You know? Yeah,
it's so cliche, but communication is key, especially in the world of business ownership where there's just so many uncertainties. So when we talk about communication, talk through the certainties, talk through the uncertainties, and talk through your fears around both, right? I think a lot of times I see entrepreneurial or business owner couples, they have problems because one person isn't communicating their fears or their concerns, and all they're doing is just projecting them onto the other person. That can show up in many different forms, but I think one of the questions that Lauren has for me here in a little bit, I'm going to dive into what I would do differently, and it would definitely be around you know, my communication when we were building. But I always say you have to align expectations with your partner, especially when you're building business. So like if you know, you're going into a busy season and you know you're going to be working more often than you normally are, and you want your significant other to support you instead of think that there's something wrong or that you're not holding up your end of the bargain of being present like you said you were, but you didn't communicate that with them, and then you're mad at them for getting upset with you for working extra and quote unquote not supporting you. It's just like they only can support you to the level that you explain yourself and the expectations around the season that you're going into. And so I think that's a fantastic question. As cliche as it sounds, communication is key. Communicate the certainties, communicate the uncertainties, and always communicate the fears, right? But often with the fears, though, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? And you got to remember that if your significant other is the business owner, is the CEO, if you will, right, and is more involved in the business, they are dealing with a lot. And how you project your fears on them is either going to help them or hurt them, right? And if it's helping or hurting them, guess what? It's helping or hurting your family. And so I think that's a great piece of advice. And so speaking of family, right, I can kind of hear her screaming in the background a little bit right now. I think she went back to sleep though. And we have a newborn Peyton. She is 9 weeks today.
Yep.
10 weeks, 9 weeks? 9 weeks. I knew that. 9 weeks today, which is crazy to even say. And so, it's one thing to talk about wanting to be a good example for your kids. It's another thing to actually do it. And so my last question here for Lauren, is what do you want Peyton to learn from having entrepreneurial parents?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question.
Great question.
And it makes me a little emotional because I know that, I was gonna say I think, but I know that JFF has built the foundation for us to even have her, for her to exist. I know that, God has this whole plan of like, okay, and I say this to everyone, when they found out we were pregnant, I'm like, we were meant to have her in this exact time, this exact moment. I know that not a second before, not a second later. And I know that all the financial security and the foundations that we've built to bring her into this family, in this home, in this world, is because of JFF, like just knowing that we can support her in any way that she needs, anything that happens, anything that comes up, we have her now. And so my biggest thing that I want her to know is that, she can do anything she wants, however she wants to do it, whenever she wants to do it. And we're going to support her because we've done it, like we're living proof of it. Right. And I just want her to, I think the biggest way that you can set an example for your kids is to live it, so we're living it every single day, and she gets to grow up watching that. Yeah. And we're rock stars, like we're badass parents, and for her to get to see that every day of her life is just so cool. Yeah. More is caught than taught. Like I think that's so, like I could tell my kids all day to go out and follow their dreams, take risks, overcome challenges, be resilient. But like if they're not seeing you do that, it doesn't matter what you're saying to them, right? Like you got to lead by example. And I think a big part of that leading by example is a part of being entrepreneur parents is you're going to go through adversity. Business is just a game of solving problems that create more problems. The top of one mountain is the bottom of the next one. And I think that's one thing we're learning, as business owners and as parents. It's like, we got to get out of the mentality of like, as soon as we get through this tension, life's going to be fantastic. Like the Bible says, not if, but when. It's just a new set of problems. New levels, new devils is a real thing. And so, and we're not over here saying that she's going to learn how to be a perfect human from us, but she's going to learn how you actually go after your dreams. And a big part of that is dealing with adversity, expecting adversity, and leaning on the people around you that, I think have your best interest in mind. And so I love that question for her. I think she has a great example of parents to look up to. And, that was one promise I made to myself is I'm going to teach her abundance. I'm going to show her opportunities in life. She's not going to be constricted with what she thinks she can do and the thoughts that she has about what is possible for her. I want her by 5 years old thinking that she can be president one day, that she can, what is the valedictorian? You could be valedictorian of Stanford while having a double major, while building a business while you're in college. If you want to do that and you think it's in your best interest and it's going to impact this world mostly, and it's what God is calling you to do, most importantly, if what God is calling you to do, even if it's big, scary, and challenging, she's going to believe that she can do it. Yeah, for sure. And I love that. And I think that's a great answer from you. So I wanted to add to one thing that, growing up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked, I'd like to say 9 to 5, but most days it was like 6 to 6 or 6 to 7. He worked Saturdays, he worked Sundays, he was doing whatever he could to provide for us. And I will never, shame him for that. But I'm so excited that we're going to be there for her for everything, every step of the way, every game, and my parents made every effort they could to be everywhere, and they always were. But we have no excuse not to. Right. We have all the time in the world to be able to say, hey, let's go to our soccer game or whatever, lacrosse game, cheerleading, whatever. Being able to have that freedom. Yeah. We can travel and go to games in the middle of the week if we have to, just being able to have that freedom of time is so huge. Right. And, it's like, I never want to miss things because of work. Right. Yeah. Financial freedom really has very little to do with the money and much more to do with the time and energy and choice that you buy back for you and your family. Like, I don't give a shit about the money in our bank account itself. I care that I'm going to be able to, on random Tuesdays, be walking the park with my daughter when most people would be stuck
at a day job, right? Or being able to make memories that most people couldn't make because of the constrictions of time, money, energy, and choice. And we're just not going to have that. And she's going to be able to experience that firsthand, what that does for her and her development, and go out and do it for, her kids and whoever else she builds a family with. And so I think that that's kind of leading into my answer to this question. So probably a good way to, segue as, Lauren's ending. I'm sure she's going to obviously chime in as we go, but we're going to switch here. She's going to ask me some questions and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw that question back at you. What do you want Peyton to learn from having, parents who own a business?
I want her to learn what true wealth looks like from having a dad who is truly wealthy, right? And so what I mean by that is I grew up watching movies and TV shows where the successful dad was a corporate America guy. He was gone 60 hours a week. He missed all the sports games like you were talking about, right? He's barely even knows his kids, right? All for the sake of materialistic and worldly accomplishments. And that's what I grew up thinking a wealthy dad looks like, a rich dad looks like, right? And I almost prided myself on that in the corporate America days where I was like, I'm going to be gone 50 hours a week wearing a suit, making, a couple $100,000 climbing the corporate ladder. Nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing wrong with that at all, right? To each their own. But that's not true wealth, right? That's what movies and entertainment depicted, I think, as rich dads, to our generation growing up, and still kind of does it. And it's just like, that's not true. That's not real wealth. That's not truly being rich. Peyton's going to learn from having entrepreneurial parents what a real rich dad looks like. And that's someone that is not just massively wealthy financially, but massively wealthy time, energy, and choice-wise, right? Where I am at every one of her soccer games, where I am picking her up and dropping her off to school, where I am making her breakfast in the morning, where I am prioritizing, right, my time and energy for my family, and I'm with them much more than I am working, right? And I'm like, that's true wealth. That's a true rich daddy right there, right? Not just one who is rich monetarily, right? But someone who is rich time, energy, and choice-wise. And so Peyton is going to learn from having entrepreneurial parents what a real rich dad or what real rich parents look like. And I think that those are some of the details and characteristics that to me are true wealth. You're not truly wealthy unless your financial wealth allows you to have the freedom of choice, time, and energy, right? And she's going to learn that from us.
Yeah. The one thing that I was so excited about when we decided that we were taking this adventure of, bringing JFF to life was when we do one day have kids, because you were so busy at the hospital, you were working late nights, we were kind of ships passing, and so I was really excited for you to be able to do that, and just to hear you say can't wait to go to her soccer games and, take her to school, that just lights my heart up. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I know she's not old enough to see, but just yesterday we had an emergency with our dog, and I had meetings all day, but I literally made one phone call to one of my team members and she rescheduled my entire day, and I was able to move things and not have to show up if I didn't want to, and be there for the family, get the doggy through the emergency, figure out all the logistics, and she wasn't old enough to see that, but she's going to see that in the future and be like, whoa, none of my other friends' dads can run a multi-million-dollar business and just show up for their family at the drop of a hat no matter what. And so true wealth. So I think that's a great question to throw back at me.
For sure. All right, second question. You ready? Mm-hmm. All right. What have you learned about God in the process of building JFF?
Just about everything.
What have you not learned?
Yes. Building a business, particularly financial freedom, right, has a heck of a lot more to do with the outcome or a heck of a lot less to do with the outcome and a heck of a lot more to do with the human being that you become in the process. And you're doing it right when you're becoming the most authentic version of yourself. And the most authentic version of yourself, right, is who God created you to be. And so I've learned so much about God in this process, but I think the first thing that comes to mind is God provides. God will provide, especially if you play your part. And I love, adding on to that, God is in control, right? That's the second thing that I've learned. God provides and God is in control. And so what I mean by that is we've had mass amounts of success, right, inside of JFF, we definitely have had our tension throughout the years, and no business owner hasn't. And so tension, whether that come, internally, whether that's externally, whether that's personal, whether that's financially, whether that's business wise, whatever that looks like, right? And some months we're just like, man, we're not going to hit our goals, or man, we might, have a bad month this month. And all of a sudden, I just keep playing my part, keep being the leader that God's calling me to do, obviously making mistakes in that process, not being perfect, but doing my absolute best to step up and play my part. And all of a sudden God provides, right? So we have to do our job if we want God to be able to do his job. God can't do his job if we're not doing our job or playing our part. And so God provides every single month, every single year, month in and month out, particularly when we play our part, right? And so God wants to see you move before he moves a lot of times. It's something that I've really learned. A lot of times we're waiting around like, God, just show me a sign, or just do this for me, or just help get me out of this. When he wants to do that, but he's just waiting for you to put one foot in front of the other so then he can then play his part. So that's a big thing that I learned. God provides. Yes. God provides. Yeah. And the second thing is that God is in control. No matter how much you want to convince yourself that you're in control, no matter how much your ego wants to convince you that you're in control, you're really not. The most random shit can happen at any time. I did not expect to get a phone call yesterday from my wife that our dog is going in for emergency surgery that was going to cost $10,000 and we don't have pet insurance, right? Like can't control that. Yeah. Can't control that, right? It just came out of left field. Not even that over the past couple of months we've been dealing with a big old flood in our house. Right? And as much as I want to think that we're in control, all it takes is one pipe to burst to do multiple six figures of damage in your brand new renovated home, right? And now you're in a rental property up the street with your whole plans for the summer completely in shambles, and you have to pivot, right? And so God is in control. We are not in control. But a quote that has really helped me is, God is in control, but we're in charge. And that's going to drive home my first point a little bit. Like, God wasn't going to show up to shoot this podcast for us to get this message out there. Right? God wants to speak through us, but he can't do that until we step up and start speaking and letting him in. Right? So the perfect example of God, we're in control of, or we're in charge of our actions, and God is in control of the bigger picture. And the best thing is just put one foot in front of the other, right? God is calling you to step forward. Put that foot in front of the other, and he'll reveal the next step for you. And so I've learned so much about God in this process. I think the third thing too, I wasn't going to say this, but I'll bring it up, is God is not a tit for tat relationship, right? Like, God's not punishing you because you did something wrong. God is not rewarding you either a lot of times because you did something right, which I know might seem a little counterintuitive to what I just said. But God wants the best for you, right? But a big part of giving you the best is making sure that you're giving yourself the best, right? But like, if I was to go, sin after this and lie, if you will, like, God's not going to strike me with lightning the next minute, right? And or make my business go under, right? But is there this thing called cause and effect? Of course, right? Over time, if you keep doing something that causes a certain effect, of course that's going to happen. But God is not tit for tat either way. There's nothing that you can do to have God love you any less or any more, right? And God doesn't punish you, he just guides you. God doesn't punish you, he just directs you. And a lot of times that direction comes through him trying to speak to you, right? He'll try to speak to you in what I say, whispers first, then if you're not listening, right, he'll try to speak to you in a pinch, and if you're not listening, then he'll try to speak to you with a shove, and if you're not listening, like I like to say, he's going to smack you across the forehead with a 2x4, right? And so over time, make sure he doesn't have to get that drastic. You don't have to lose your home or lose your business or lose your wife or have death, disease, or divorce or destruction make you learn, right? Have God be able to whisper to you, like when you're driving down the street, and like he gives you that hunch, right? That intuition, which is really just, to me, the spirit inside of you, right? That intuition, like, you might not be doing the right thing by making that phone call. You might not be doing the right thing by sending that text message. You might want to wait 10 minutes to calm down. Like, answer those so you don't have to have death, disease, or destruction teach you finally. So those are the things that I've learned from God, along the other book that I could possibly write one day about the rest of things that I've learned in the process.
I'm glad you included that last point, because one thing I was going to say when you were done talking was that, his grace and mercy is so evident in so much of his business. I feel just because, you make a mistake or you say something wrong, or you may not have a good meeting, or, whatever it may be, I feel like it's important to remember that he shows grace and to give ourselves that too. Yeah. So I think that's really important.
Yep.
All right. Third question. If you could go back, would you do anything differently when it comes to building this business, JFF?
The first thing and the main thing that comes to mind is I would communicate with my loved ones better, particularly early on. And so I wouldn't change how hard I worked.
Mm-hmm.
I would change the communication to my loved ones around that hard work, why I was doing it, how long I was going to be doing it for, and then ultimately how I was going to prioritize them, right, in addition to the hard work. And so going back with JFF, right, beginning stages, I had a corporate 9-to-5 job, right, while ramping this business up for the first 6 months. And I told myself, not other people, but I told myself, I'm going to work my absolute ass off. I'm going to push myself to my limits. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get this business off the ground, scale it, make enough money where I can leave my day job and take this on full blown. And I was able to do that within 5 months. By month number 4, I was making almost 3 times a month that I was making in my very successful corporate job, right? And a big part of that was the work that I put in. I showed up early mornings, late nights, weekends, working 7 days a week, because to myself, I explained it to myself, it was a short-term sacrifice. I could take 6 months and get success that most people don't get in 6 years by working overtime and pushing myself, right? And really doing the work that needed to be done to get such fast results in a short period of time. So I was on that page, right? But nobody else around me was, right? Lauren and I, at the time, we were engaged, and I was working like 15-hour days, almost 7 days a week. And I was coming upstairs, and I couldn't even talk to her, let alone look at her, right? And while she was understanding and did her job, did her best to show grace, right? It's just should have been communicated on my end, right, about what my goals were with working that hard. And another example here before I get into what I would have done, like how I actually would have had those conversations, is I'll never forget when I talked to my mom one day and she was like, Justin, I haven't heard from you in 3 months, right? And I'm like, wow, that really struck me. And so I wouldn't change how hard I worked. I would do the same thing. I just would communicate with my loved ones better and then prioritize time with them better. And so, for example, I would say, hey, babe, for the next 6 months, I'm going to work 15-hour days, right? I know it's going to be tough. I know it's going to be a lot on the family, especially me being downstairs in the basement of my office all day. But why I'm doing that is after 6 months, I believe I can leave my day job, right? I believe that I can have a larger impact on people. I believe that this is what God is calling me to do. And I believe that I'm going to set our family up for financial freedom so we never have to worry about money ever again. And shortly after that 6-month phase, right, I'm going to work the least I've ever worked, make the most I've ever made, and have the largest impact I've ever had on our